Hey, what's up, jelly beans? My name's Megan Kerstetter, and welcome to my art channel. Today I'm going to be working on 3 different ways you can use acrylic paint. As you can see, I've started off with a sketch. I actually had 4 of them because I had planned on doing a different video for this, but I really wanted to practice with my brush pens and then compare it to how I work with Micron pens or how my finished products look when I use Micron pens. You can see, like, from the line work that I am not really familiar with brush pens. It's totally different from using a Micron because the tip is soft. It acts like a brush would, although I feel like I've gotten more control from an ink and a brush in the past, but that was a long time ago, so whatever. Anyway, you can see me using my Micron pen now, and it did take longer than the brush pen because the brush pen, I can get thick and thin lines really quickly, as opposed to the Micron, which you have to go over it a couple of times if you're using a smaller tip. I am a super control freak, so I go over my line work multiple times. Yeah, and here you can see the comparison. On the left is the Micron pen drawing, on the right is the brush pen drawing, and you can tell the difference between what I know how to use and what I'm like experimenting with. Though this is they're both being experimented with because I don't usually work traditionally, but now I'm in the position where I can work traditionally. But anyway, I ended up with a third drawing, and I figured, well, I might as well, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do 3 paintings with these. So starting off, I decided that I was gonna use really thick opaque paint, and I was gonna paint over the brush pen drawing because I wasn't entirely happy with it, and I figured, hey, I can fix this. I can make this into an image that I actually like, or at least I can practice doing this to eventually make images that I like more. Stay positive, keep going. Anyway, so yeah, I'm using really thick paint and some matte medium to blend along with water, but mostly it's just a lot of paint. You can see I'm working from dark to light with my paints. I put down my darkest colors first, which will then eventually become my shadows, or at least that's the way I would like it to, because I usually end up going through the ugly painting stages, I think it's called. I make a lot of mistakes, and put paints where they shouldn't be, or I mess something up and I usually have to paint over it. But acrylic's really forgiving in the way that you can paint right over top of whatever mistakes you've made a couple of times at least. I haven't picked up acrylics in more than a year, I think. It's been a while, but I was happy to see that I wasn't doing as badly with them as I thought I would. Is that there you go, whatever. Along with working dark to light, I also work back to front with the shapes. I will do her face first before I paint her hair or her bangs. Although I guess I could paint the back of her hair first, then do her face, and then do her bangs, but that seems a little convoluted to me, and I like to keep things as simple as possible. I tried to stay consistent with this throughout the image, although because I don't work traditionally a lot, sometimes it would get away from me. I would either relax too much and not pay attention to the painting enough, or I would just get so wrapped up in, I want to paint this part first, that I would jump the gun. And, you know, it happens. I think it happens to every artist, but the more you work with a medium, the more mature you become as an artist, you're able to stop yourself from immediately painting the foreground objects, if you know what I mean. It's that whole, I want to paint the characters before I paint the background kind of temptation. And yes, I'm still working on maturing out of that, I guess. I don't know. I think we all get caught up in it, or I'd like to think so it makes me feel better. Yeah, so anyway, I started off with a dark base for her hair, thinking I was going to go over top of that with a lighter color, and I didn't feel like it was dark enough, so I ended up actually, instead of going throughout all of her hair, I did the shading like I would digitally, and that would be putting my dark shading on after my color. So I kind of switched it up. I think it depends on what you're comfortable with and your knowledge of how you can layer the paints, just how you can use the medium, and your experience. It turned out okay. I'm pretty happy with it. Actually, it took me a little while to get the kind of contrast that I wanted between her hair and the shadows. And yeah, I tried to make it seem like her hair was getting lighter the further forward on the right side that it came, but I think it got a little lost in just trying to get those values to where I wanted them to be. So it's something to look at, something to watch out for when I paint in future videos. Let's see, her cape, I actually wanted her cape to seem like it was two different colors. One color underneath was like a dark green, and then on top it's like light gray. In hindsight, I think I got a little too carried away with the values. I made under the cloak a bit too dark, especially with the color that I chose for her arm, which is really light and is kind of distracting from the focal point. But once again, another thing I will have to look out for in future paintings. And at this point in the image, I am just trying to chisel out the shapes of her face and really nail what I wanted her features to be like. It was a little hard because I wasn't getting the kind of transfer I wanted from the paper above. I just foregoed trying to use the transfer paper and just had the image, one of the other pictures next to me to reference, and just try to get the mouth right, as well as just flipping the paper from over top of it, kind of like, almost like they do in animation. Okay, so at some point I knew I was going to have to add in my line work again because my paint was so thick, and I tried to do it with Micron pens, but yeah, no. The paint was too thick, and I don't think I couldn't get the ink to stick with the Micron, so I ended up grabbing some, I think it was, I'm not really sure what brand of ink that was. It might be Indian ink, whatever. It wasn't very waterproof, I can tell you that, because every time I redid the mouth and was like, no, I want to paint over it, it would smudge, and I got really annoyed by that. But anyway, this was the only way I could get the ink to stay down, was with the, I don't know what, the quill brush? What do you call those things? Whatever. And in the end, I was mostly satisfied with what I got. I actually like the way this image looks in the video more than I do in real life. It's really interesting, because most of the time I feel like artists don't like their art in their videos. They're like, oh, this looks so much better in real life, but I'm like, no, you don't want to entirely see it in real life. So yeah, at this point I am doing touch-ups and just trying to fix anything that I am not really satisfied with. I was really, really obsessed with getting the mouth right, and although I didn't get it to my personal level of perfection, I still, it didn't come out too bad. I'm happy with it. I say that a lot. It didn't come out too bad. I'm pretty happy with it. Slap that on a t-shirt and sell it. Oh my gosh, guys, let me tell you something about Scotch masking tape. I don't know if I'm using the wrong kind, but when I tried to peel this stuff off, it totally tore up my paper, and which was really upsetting because I wanted these to look nice afterwards, and it made the edges of the paint kind of ragged, and I was like, no. But you live and you learn, and I guess that's what I learned this time, and that's the finished piece right there. For the next painting, I'm working with washes. Washes are where you take paint and dilute it with water, so I'm working in really thin layers of paint. I actually made it a point not to use any matte medium on this piece. I just wanted to work with the pigment and the water and see how far I could take it. I also wanted to try to treat it more like watercolors and use the white of the paper as opposed to white paint, but at some points I think I actually did use a little bit of white paint or mixes of white paint with other paints so that I could get lighter colors. Since this is an exercise in acrylic paint, I don't feel too bad about it. These are practice pieces, so it doesn't really bother me if I break some of the rules because I have to fix something. One thing I did really like about washes is that I work more like this digitally than I do with the other process of using really thick paint. I do the base color and then I do a darker color for any of the shadows. The only thing that's different is not being able to put highlights or trying to work from the paper and getting just paint and the paper to be my highlights. And at some point I did end up grabbing some white or lighter paint and going over the top of the highlights with, you know, more washes or a little bit thicker of paint so that I could get them to pop out a little bit more. I pulled out my Micron pen, and since there wasn't as much paint there, it wasn't as thick, I was still able to use the tooth of the paper, is what I'm thinking. The texture of the paper took to the pen better than having layers and layers of acrylic paints. So I'm pretty happy about that, and I was able to touch up my ink drawing and get it back to the way it was at the beginning. And yeah, she turned out pretty cute. I like that. My only other critique would be I wish I would have kept more control of the values when I first put down the paint in the background, because I have this kind of, it's lighter around her and then darker towards the edges. I forgot I was working with just water and pigment, and I put too dark of a color down for to be able to bring the paper back, so if that makes any sense. However, I did remember to keep that in mind for the next painting, and that's why you can see that the paper is being more like the light source behind her while I'm glazing layers of paint over top on the edges. So yeah, I did like that. I tried not to use, since I didn't use any matte medium with the watercolor-esque piece, I decided I wasn't going to use much water for the glazing piece, which might have been a bit of a mistake on my part, because since the paint wasn't thinned down, it, with the medium, kept it really quite thick. So my line art kind of disappeared underneath the color a bit more than it did in the wash painting. One other thing I can say is that when using the matte medium, I was able to get a lot of texture out of it because I was pushing the paint around so much. A downside to it was if the matte medium and paint wasn't dried all the way yet and I was pushing it around, it would end up pulling up the paint and leaving little spots on the painting where it was lighter than I wanted it to be. The paper was showing through more, and that wasn't what I wanted for that. And it, for some reason, it was really hard to paint over those spots. And I don't really know why. If anybody has any idea why that is, let me know in the comments. That'll really help me out for any future paintings that I do. But I do like how I got this sort of, not blotchy, I don't want to say, but this rough kind of texture in the background. And that was the most successful part of, I felt, texture-wise in this painting. I tried matching her skin color up with the other paintings, but somehow the last image became really, really orange. And I think I tried to bring it back with some lighter paint. Yeah, I put some lighter paint down, but then my line art was starting to disappear again, and this was actually my favorite line art. I thought I was going to do really well with the glaze painting because I have already worked through 2 other paintings. It didn't quite turn out that way. I think if I would have added more water, it would have made a difference. Also, I think I accidentally grabbed gloss medium as opposed to matte medium at one point. So there are pieces of this painting that are shinier than the others. And I didn't realize that until after the fact. I feel like I subconsciously realized it. I was like, why does this painting look so shiny? And then it hit me later on that I accidentally left the gloss medium next to me. So next time if I'm trying to only use one of them, which generally you do, I will be leaving the one I'm not using out of reach. Same concept as before with the washes. I use a base color for whatever shape that I'm doing, like her hair right now, and then I go over with a darker color for the shadows. Again, I kind of was trying to change the color of the hair after I had done my first 2 initial go-throughs with colors. So the values were not strong enough, contrasting enough for me. So I tried to fix that by bringing in more paint, and I'm just glad it wasn't over her face as much because I really wanted to keep the line art from her face from getting lost. And that's why I keep on coming back in with this Micron pen and going over her mouth and her eyes multiple times because I kept on trying to paint over and over again. I am glad once again that I don't know what it is. Maybe it is the matte medium allowed for the Micron pen to work, and I didn't have to use the dipping pen to go over it again, because I am more comfortable with Micron pens as opposed to the one where you have to dip it in the ink. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the way she did come out, and I do like each of these paintings. I learned a lot from working with the medium in 3 different ways and just painting traditionally. Like I said, I haven't done it in a long time, and this exercise just gave me a chance to see where I stand when it comes to working with actual paints. If you like this video, I would love it if you hit that thumbs up button, or even better yet, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. For my subscribers that have still stuck around, I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch and comment on my videos. Just watching my videos, I appreciate it. And I can't wait to see you later. Also, remember, you're awesome.